Right now, the factions are negotiating at Beidaihe because after the Zhang Youxia incident, the CCP's top leadership is in serious open division.
At a moment like this, the military's stance is absolutely critical.
So they've arrested Zhang Youxia. Does that mean Xi Jinping now truly, genuinely has the military fully in his grip?
He dealt with Zhang Youxia, the man, but he hasn't solved the deeper structural problem of the chairman responsibility system, the question of who the guns actually obey.
In the end, Xi will find out it wasn't that Zhang Youxia openly rebelled, he'd simply been completely sidelined.
The Conservatives, with Zheng Qinghong as their figurehead, represent the party's core base. Their preferred solution now is to let Xi step down with dignity, not for Xi's own sake, but because they're afraid a purge against him will spiral out of control and drag the whole regime down with it. That's what they fear.
Power grows out of the barrel of a gun, and in the end, whoever actually has the guns, whoever commands enough force, becomes the one who sits at the top.
Xi's biggest trump card is that he knows the Conservatives' weak spot is their need to protect the party itself, and what we're seeing now is an unmistakable mutual destruction threat.
Hello everyone and welcome to PinnacleView. I'm your host Shi Shan. This year's Beidaihe meeting is going to be genuinely unusual because the 5th plenum convenes in October, and that's just 2 months away now. The 5th plenum has to settle whether she gets another term at the 21st Congress along with major personnel decisions. Right now, the factions are negotiating at Beidaihe because after the Zhang Youxia incident, the leadership is in serious open division. The party has always been guided by the gun, so the real question is, who actually holds those guns right now? The CCP's military system remains a genuinely unique, deeply secretive thing. In just the past few years, the Central Military Commission has gone from 7 members all the way down to 2. Every single vice chairman arrested or replaced. One of the charges against the first vice chairman was seriously trampling on and undermining the CMC chairman responsibility system. What exactly did he do to trample on it, to undermine it? The party has never once disclosed that, so the real question becomes, can Xi Jinping truly command the military? And if so, how? In whatever struggles lie ahead for the party, what role will the military actually end up playing? These have all become genuinely serious, wide-open questions. So today we're taking a close look at what's been happening lately inside the Chinese military, and more importantly, why. Joining us today is veteran journalist Ms. Guo. Hello, Ms. Guo. Welcome to the show. And joining us too, independent filmmaker Li Jun. But before we get into it, let's take a quick word from our sponsor, Puritang's Black Ginseng, long prized as a precious health food. Puritang recently heard back from a brand new customer who said the product was genuinely fantastic, far beyond anything he'd expected going in. And after just a single week of taking it regularly, he already felt noticeably, distinctly more energetic than before. He said he normally can't take ginseng products at all because they give him a heaty reaction, but this particular Puritang Black Ginseng gave him none of that problem whatsoever. His only real complaint, it tastes so good that he honestly has to hold himself back from overdoing it every time. And really, you shouldn't overdo it with any supplement. Absorption is what actually matters most. Xuanbao Black Ginseng is traditionally fermented through and through, broken all the way down at the molecular level, so it's genuinely easy for the body to absorb. You really don't need much at a time. So now, when you're checking out on a Puritang Black Ginseng order, remember to enter our exclusive PinnacleView promo code JYLT for completely free worldwide shipping. There are also gifts waiting at certain spending thresholds. Spend $500 and you get a whole ginseng root completely free. Spend $3,000 and you get a premium grade root thrown in on top. This is a genuinely rare deal to get. And look, whatever's happening with China's military these days, we should all still make sure to take good care of our own health first, above everything else. All right, let's get back to today's actual topic. Let me start with Li Jun. There's been a story recently, I don't know if you've been following it closely, but a lot of people certainly have. It's about the commander of the Beijing garrison, a man named Chen Yuan. Yuan as in source, not the yuan that means vitality. He hasn't had a single official mention anywhere in a very long time, and everyone's been guessing what actually happened to this man. You really haven't been following this at all?
The post of Beijing Garrison Commander, historically we used to call it the Nine Gates Commissioner, right? It's basically the equivalent of commander-in-chief of the capital's defense forces. His job day-to-day is guarding Zhongnanhai, the central leadership compound, and the capital's overall security, and in wartime, covering the leadership's own evacuation. It's essentially a corps-level command, reporting directly to the CMC, meaning he personally holds the guns of Beijing. Chen Yuan suddenly showed up in this post about 10 days before Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli's downfall was officially announced on January 24th. And notably, he came up through the People's Armed Police, which broke the usual pattern of this particular job going to an elite army general. That's more than 6 months now. And in all that time, there has been no official word on Chen Yuan whatsoever, no announcement of any new post for him, and no notice of any investigation either. Overseas analysts see a few possibilities. One, he's still in the post, but ordered to keep an extremely low profile, kept out of public view, so outsiders can't tell who really controls Beijing's guns. That's one theory. The second, maybe he knows too much sensitive inside information, and now they're done with him, kicking away the ladder.
There's another sensitive angle here. Li Keqiang's death in Shanghai, right? At the time, Chen Yuan was in the armed police, commander of the Shanghai Corps, and that Dongjiao guest house was under armed police control.
When Li Keqiang died, among all the rumors that circulated, one of them pointed straight at Chen Yuan. At the time, none of us even knew who Chen Yuan was. The rumor said, "Do you know who the armed police commander in Shanghai was? Chen Yuan, he's the one who orchestrated it. In this system, when even the commander of the capital's own garrison can vanish for 6 months with nobody asking questions, that tells you control over the military has become extremely sensitive, extremely opaque."
Now, everyone keeps debating what Zhang Youxia actually did. The official charge is seriously trampling on and undermining the chairman responsibility system, but how exactly in actual practice did he trample on it? Is there any actual account of it anywhere, what really happened here?
Right, how did he trample on the chairman, meaning Xi Jinping himself? What Zhang Youxia actually did, I think, was step by step strip away Xi's loyalists in the military, his personal retainers, and anyone who could check Zhang's own power. So Zhang effectively became the one who was really in control, and he did it step by step. The very first step was taking down Zhong Xiaojun. Zhong Xiaojun was Xi's own secretary, brought up with him from Zhejiang, a true personal retainer. He was eventually eased out of his core position. On paper, it looked like a routine reshuffle, but really Zhang Youxia used a backlash inside the military to pull out Xi's most trusted military steward. That cut straight into Xi's own network of loyalists, right? Next came He Weidong and Miao Hua. After the 20th Congress, the two of them actually wanted to move against Zhang Youxia. Instead, Miao Hua was suspended first, then He Weidong fell soon after. That effectively wiped out the whole southeastern faction and the political work system right along with it. After those two moves, almost nobody left on the commission could actually check Zhang Youxia. Real command authority and personnel power had ended up entirely in his hands. So the chairman responsibility system became, in effect, an empty shell. And in the end, Xi would find out it wasn't that Zhang Youxia had openly rebelled against him, it's that he'd simply quietly been completely sidelined.
You know, the party's always said the party commands the gun, but everyone knows the military has traditionally held a fairly large share of seats, whether on the Central Committee or in the NPC. Isn't that right, Ms. Guo? But ever since the 20th Congress, nearly all of the military's NPC delegates and Central Committee members too have basically been purged out, haven't they? So how should I put this? Heading into this 5th plenum coming up, how many military Central Committee members are actually still left standing?
At the 20th Party Congress, the PLA and Armed Police delegate bloc, and remember, these are Party Congress delegates, not Central Committee members, numbered 304 in total, making it one of the very largest blocs among all the delegations there. Of those, the generals who actually made it onto the Central Committee came to about 9% of its total, roughly 18 people, give or take. That's the number we're talking about. But right now, that whole block is being hollowed out on a truly massive scale. Of those original 18 members, 13 have already been confirmed, purged or stripped of their seats entirely, which means well over 70% of all the military background Central Committee members have already fallen from power. 70% gone. And the 20th Central Military Commission's 7-member leadership team is down to just 2, Xi Jinping and Zhang Xiangmin. In other words, 85% of the top military decision-making body is simply gone. There's a count from the American think tank CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, that since 2022, roughly 100 senior PLA generals have been dismissed or vanished from public view, affecting close to half of all general officer posts. This scale of upheaval is unprecedented in modern Chinese history, and now there are only 5 military members left on the Central Committee. The military bloc is now, without question, the single most devastated part of the entire Central Committee, more than any other bloc.
So given how relentlessly state media keeps hammering away at this chairman responsibility system, it really looks like Xi's relationship with the military just isn't good at all. And this whole crop of officers was supposedly all his own personal picks back from the 20th Congress. So what do you think his core problem actually is here? These are people he personally chose, so why has he ended up falling out with them anyway?
Let's look at how the last several CMC chairmen, going all the way back to the founding of the PRC, have each handled the military: Mao Zedong, Hua Guofeng, Deng Xiaoping, Hu Jintao, and Jiang Zemin as well. Jiang Zemin. Let's start with the two who could genuinely command the military outright, Mao and Deng. Why could these two control it? The reason for that is actually quite simple. They earned it with real blood, on real battlefields, an authority forged entirely by risking their own lives in actual war. Now look at Hua Guofeng, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao. None of them came up through the military. None carried that battlefield-forged authority. So the way all three of them handled the military was basically a compromise. Plain and simple. They handed real, substantial power to the generals, even quietly allowed the military to run its own businesses on the side, tolerated a certain amount of corruption, trading those benefits for the military's outward loyalty and cooperation. Put plainly, that's simply buying peace with money and turf, and Xi's own position is far more awkward and complicated than any of these three predecessors ever had it. He doesn't have the real battle-earned authority that Mao or Deng had, but he also refuses to settle for being the kind of commander who compromises and shares power with the generals, the way Hua, Zhang, and Hu did. What he wants is total control, pulling the military entirely back into his own hands. In his own habitual phrase, he wants prestige, he wants real power, he wants loyalists, he wants absolute loyalty, he wants everything, and won't give up a single piece.
He wants it all, and then some, and a little more besides.
So the CCP's military system is by nature a landscape of entrenched fiefdoms, every theatre command, every service branch, decades deep in tangled roots. Force a power structure that complicated into just one man's hands, and conflict becomes truly inevitable. Looking back at the 20th Congress, the key reason Xi could amend the constitution and secure another term was Zhang Youxia backing him within the military. Xi consolidated his power riding entirely on Zhang Youxia's strength, but the stronger Zhang became, the more it genuinely panicked Xi, and that panic only ever deepened over time. He knew perfectly well if Zhang Youxia could hand him power, Zhang could just as easily take it away again. So it eventually came down to Xi discarding the man who'd served his purpose, clawing real military power back from Zhang into his own hands alone. And fear like that, driving a power grab, is bound to keep generating new conflicts.
So now that Zhang Youxia has actually been arrested, has Xi Jinping truly managed to successfully solve this whole chairman responsibility system problem once and for all? In other words, does he now genuinely truly have the military completely in his own grip?
No, not really. Arresting Zhang Youxia didn't actually get Xi the military power back at all. Right now, apart from the chairman himself, the PLA seems to have only 5 full generals left standing. Han Shengyan, along with Eastern Theatre Commander Yang Zibin, plus Zhang Shuguang and Wang Gang, both just promoted to full general on July 3rd, and of course Defense Minister Dong Jun. 4 of those 5 aren't actually Xi's own people at all. Only Dong Jun, whom Miao Hua originally promoted up from the Navy, really counts as Xi's man among them. As for who Xi can genuinely call his own faction inside the military, well, Zhang Shuguang, who handles discipline inspection, actually belongs to Zhang Shengmin's own line, not Xi's. Setting him aside, Han Shengyan, Yang Jibin and Wang Gang all trace their roots back to the Air Force system, and Dong Jun, the only Navy man among them, is the defense minister that Miao Hua left behind. Outside observers generally read the rest of these generals as belonging to the turf that former party chief Hu Jintao spent years and years cultivating inside the military, the Air Force, in other words, that whole system. Zhang Shengmin is now CMC vice chairman, and yes, he has confirmed he is aligned with the decision-making and ideology coordination group Xi set up after his stroke. Back when He Weidong, Miao Hua and other generals, Xi's own loyalists in the military, were purged, that was Zhang Yuxia's doing, all of it Zhang Youxia. Zhang Shengmin worked right alongside Zhang Youxia, Liu Zhenli and that coordination group. So all this really means is that Xi's arrest of Zhang Youxia only removed one strongman he genuinely feared. Real command authority, personnel power, and the loyalty of officers all the way down the ranks, none of that has actually shifted back to Xi at all. He solved the man, Zhang Youxia, but not the structural problem of the chairman responsibility system, the question of who the guns really obey. That answer is still unclear, and if anything, it's tilting in a direction unfavorable to Xi.
That's exactly the state of China's military right now, all across the board. Zhang Youxia, Liu Zhenli, every theatre commander, the Navy and Air Force commanders too, all of them simply gone. So the entire chain of command, top to bottom, has been broken. And honestly, growing a full general from scratch takes 20 years, 30 years. There is simply no shortcut, no way to skip ahead. You can't just take someone off the street, a college grad, a professor, a colonel, even a major general, and put him straight into a full general's chair. Those are two completely, entirely different things. So I think what people are genuinely puzzled by right now is, how does this military even function anymore?
This is a genuinely dangerous situation we're describing. The Chinese military is, to the outside world, an enormous black box. How strong is it really? Are there internal factions at play? How much of the party's actual command over it can anyone even observe? All you ever see from the outside are a few edges poking out around that box, never ever the whole picture at all. Those of us who were actually born into military families really do know just how tangled it is on the inside. You can never fully untangle the relationships in there. They all trace back to Yan'an, one lineage after another, endlessly interwoven with each other, generation after generation. And military affairs keep getting more technical, while the party's civilian officials lack that expertise. So ironically, the civilians end up depending more and more on the officers' professional judgment. So every top CCP leader since Jiang Zemin has had zero combat experience. Even Xi, who considers himself to have some military connection, doesn't actually feel secure about it. That's why he's trying so hard to remake the entire military system from the ground up. Xi's problem right now isn't just wanting to be the final political say. He also wants to control internal personnel moves, officers' loyalty, even that little private turf the military's run on the side for decades now. All of it, every bit of it. The defense industry money, he wants that pulled entirely under his own control too. But by launching the anti-corruption campaign, Xi directly touched that interest, which means he was the one who broke the unspoken deal first. That's a genuinely different model from America, where everyone stays firmly in their own lane. The US president simply doesn't touch the military's internal personnel details or resource decisions. That's regarded as strictly professional territory. But Xi wants political loyalty, personnel control, and the military's purse strings all at the very same time. Trying to pull everything back into his own hands like that is bound to collide harder and harder with a system that's always, historically, been a landscape of fiefdoms. On July 30th, at the Politburo's 27th Group Study session, Xi repeated once again, quite deliberately, that the party must have absolute command over the military, strengthening political guidance, making sure the gun always obeys the party. He also mentioned deepening the anti-corruption fight even further, tightening oversight of major projects across the board. Put plainly, what he really wants is the Zhang Youxia case pushed forward and announced publicly as soon as possible, because right now everything is stuck on that one single case. He's facing enormous resistance on every single front right now, which is exactly why he also specifically pushed for combat training and war readiness. He didn't name Taiwan directly, but raising that particular phrase at such a sensitive moment is genuinely worth noting. It's a signal that CCP politics is getting more and more chaotic, more and more disordered.
Right, and honestly, the story we've heard just recently strikes me as genuinely plausible. Professional military people are always very cautious when it comes to the whole question of actually invading Taiwan, historically speaking. Because honestly, and I mean this seriously, it's not that they simply haven't done it before. Nobody in the entire world has ever done it. Crossing the strait to actually take Taiwan would be far more complex than even the Normandy landings back in World War II. Far more complex and far, far harder to actually pull off. Nobody on this entire earth has ever pulled it off before, which is exactly why any professional soldier would treat it with real, genuine caution.
Right, and I actually found what Ms. Guo just said really interesting there. Back in April, the National Defense University held a study session specifically for senior CMC officers, the first one of its kind, apparently. At that meeting, she kept hammering one point, that the military must not have fiefdoms. When I saw that, I honestly found it kind of absurd. Because the military has always had fiefdoms, that's simply how it's always worked. Wherever there's a strong, genuinely respected general, a fiefdom forms naturally right around him. If you smash every single one of those fiefdoms, you're left with no seasoned professionals in the ranks at all, right? These fiefdoms are simply a natural feature of any military. They've existed since ancient times and still do.
A military with no fiefdoms can't actually fight.
Without fiefdoms, there's no cohesion. It's because a fiefdom exists that a soldier says, I want to join the 38th Army. It has a tradition. It means something. If you smash every fiefdom, I ask you, what fighting strength does the military have left?
None left at all, and that simply doesn't work. Now, the party has always talked about this whole idea, the party commanding the gun, and the chairman responsibility system too, and that history actually runs very deep. Mao Zedong had it, Deng Xiaoping had it as well. Both of them were chairmen operating under that very same system, but neither one of them ever made it look quite like this. Had twisted into something this awkward, this genuinely contorted, this whole system he's ended up building. Isn't that right?
Right. This whole system, the party commanding the gun and the chairman responsibility system, goes back a long way, almost as old as the party's own army. Mao reaffirmed it in his writings on war and strategy. Our principle is the party commands the gun, right? After that, the phrase became almost the soul of the military. But flip that around and it means something else too. If you want to hold on to the general secretary's seat, you'd better have the gun in your own hands, right? Mao himself secured his core position through the gun. After the Zunyi conference, he gradually took military command, and only then did he truly dominate the whole party. When Zhang Guotao split the party, Mao said it outright, without hesitation, whoever holds the gun has the say. That same logic actually ran straight through the entire fighting era before 1949.
So Mao was really the gun commanding the party.
Deng later basically followed the same path. So from San Juan to Gutian, from Mao to Deng, and into the system that followed, the gun commands the party was never just a slogan, it's the actual foundation of power in the CCP. Whoever controls the gun controls the party. And conversely, the party must absolutely control the gun, or the regime becomes unstable. That mechanism is still running today, it's just gotten tighter.
Deng Xiaoping, back in those days, I think had a genuinely clear sense of boundaries. He knew exactly which things about the military he could speak on, and which things were purely the military's own business to sort out. That sense of boundary was very, very strong in him. I think Xi's biggest problem now is exactly that, no sense of boundary. Once he decided the chairman responsibility system and party commands the gun meant that principle collapses, his own sense of boundary vanished with it. He has none. Whatever I say, you obey. And that's bound to cause absolutely enormous problems. So tell me, with the 5th plenum and the 21st Congress coming next year, now that the military's leadership has been so thoroughly gutted, does its attitude still even matter anymore? Can they simply stop listening to him now?
The military's attitude is still absolutely critical. When Xi won another term at the 20th Congress, without the military's support, put plainly, without Zhang Youxia repeatedly stepping up to back him, that re-election would have run into serious trouble.
You mean back at the 20th Congress?
Right, back then. But the situation now has completely changed. These days, the only thing still loudly declaring loyalty to Xi seems to be the PLA Daily, wouldn't you say? The PLA Daily declares loyalty to Xi every single day. Without fail, that's literally its whole job. And while Xi remains chairman in name, an actual military coup still isn't very likely at all, simply because of how the current system itself is built. But in a state like this, if there's social unrest or a political upheaval, the military's attitude becomes hugely, hugely important.
The CCP's been in power for almost 80 years now, and its internal power struggles still, even today, come down to which side the military ends up backing. That's genuinely a strange thing if you think about it. So, Ms. Guo, looking ahead, in these ongoing political struggles, do you think the Chinese military could ever actually become like the American military, which genuinely stays out of politics entirely? Whoever you elect president, fine, I'll follow him, fight it out yourselves in Congress, run your own elections however you like. The CCP isn't like that. Its military is itself part of the politics. So if this ever breaks into open conflict, bloodshed is a real possibility. Do you think it'll play that kind of decisive blood on the bayonet role again in the future?
Of course, because remember, there's this story that's been circulating online about what happened after Xi's stroke. It goes back to the 4th plenum at the end of last year. Zhang Youxia, the story goes, actually asked Hu Jintao to get every single Central Committee member into the room and have them formally state their position through that exact process we walked through in our last episode, meaning, in plain terms, to push Xi Jinping out of power. Hu Jintao, still a Central Committee member himself at the time, refused, even though Xi's own people held the majority in the room. He felt that amounted to outright military interference in politics. If Zhang Youxia could force the committee to bring Xi down that way, he could just as easily use the same method to remove anyone else too.
Including forcing out Hu Jintao himself.
Or install whoever he wanted, Hu Chunhua say. So Hu Jintao refused and preferred to wait to let it play out through the proper process. And in that delay, Zhang Youxia himself ran into trouble. So yes, the military still matters critically. The intensity of the open clash between factions at this year's Beidaihe meeting, I'd say, has reached the edge of civil war. This is years of accumulated conflict finally exploding all at once. Let's zero in on the core conflict we're seeing now, two big problems layered on top of each other. The first is the succession and re-election of the top leader, which has always been the CCP's single biggest headache. At the 20th Party Congress, Xi went ahead and amended the constitution, removing the term limits on the presidency altogether, getting rid of them for good. And that whole move was tied to his using the pretext of preparing for war over Taiwan, plus the brutal COVID lockdowns on top of that, to drag the entire country into something that genuinely felt like a wartime atmosphere plainly, so he could use that state of emergency as his own convenient excuse for staying on in power. But 3 years, 7 years really, of lockdown snuffed the life out of China's economy entirely, and that's what set off the explosion within Li Keqiang's Youth League faction, along with the fierce clash between the princeling families and Xi himself. To suppress that pushback, Xi scrambled desperately to seize military power for himself. But he never actually got it. Instead, all he really did was inflame the conflict between himself and the military even further. That's what led to Xi effectively losing power at the 20th Central Committee's third plenum. The key turning point was military heavyweight Zhang Youxia turning against him, refusing to back him anymore. Right after that, Zhang Youxia went on to wipe out almost the entire 31st Army network, the very loyalist base Xi had spent over a decade personally building up. CMC Vice Chairman He Weidong, Political Work Chief Miao Hua, General Office Director Zhong Shaojun, all these marquee figures were taken down. By the time Xi resorted to unconventional means, ambushing and arresting Zhang Youxia himself directly, that single move pushed every faction inside the party into open opposition against him. Even the conservatives, the ones closest to him, turned against him too. Everyone can see it clearly now, absolutely clearly. Xi doesn't want just one more term. He wants hereditary succession, full stop. He wants to turn the entire CCP into the House of Xi. The Conservatives, meanwhile, want only to save the party itself, because only if the party survives do any of them survive along with it. That's the fundamental conflict between the two sides right now, at its core. What they're fighting over at Beidaihe right now is really just this core question playing out, whether to purge Xi outright, let him step down with dignity, or keep him on in name only, stripped of real power in a kind of Hua Guofeng arrangement. So the Conservatives, with Zhang Qinghong as their figurehead, represent the party's core base, and their preferred plan is letting Xi step down with dignity, not for Xi's sake, but because they fear a purge spiralling out of control and dragging the whole regime down with it. That's what they're afraid of. But that particular approach runs straight into fierce opposition from reformers like Wen Jiabao. Their logic is simple. Without thoroughly purging Xi, China can never truly correct course and return to the reform and opening path. And Xi's own biggest trump card is knowing full well the Conservatives' weak spot, protecting the party at any cost. Since their greatest fear is a collapse spiraling completely out of control, Xi's camp is now playing that very card directly, an unmistakable threat of mutual destruction. The rumor we saw a few days ago about Hu Jintao's entire family being wiped out makes it crystal clear that's an open, bold-faced threat. Push me too far, and we all go down together. Why does it always come down to wiping out entire families, whole family arrests every single time? The message couldn't be more unmistakable. So looking at where things genuinely stand now, there's no compromise in sight anywhere, which makes the military the truly decisive factor. This isn't something anyone can simply calculate their way to. The split has gone so deep that both sides simply no longer trust each other at all. At a moment like that, whoever ends up controlling the military becomes exceptionally, critically important. The military's stance right now is really what decides the outcome.
A genuinely stable society should really be built on institutions, what we'd call a proper legal system, the rule of law, and then due process on top of that. But the CCP's whole system runs on something else entirely, one supreme leader sitting alone at the very top. So the real question becomes, who actually gets to be that one leader? And that itself becomes the real problem, because it's never decided by an election. So what actually decides it then? The gun, sheer violence. In the end, whoever has the gun, whoever commands enough force, becomes the one who ends up sitting at the very top. A society built like that can never truly climb its way out of its most primitive form. And that's precisely why the military keeps getting dragged over and over again into these internal power struggles, turned into nothing more than a tool of political warfare. So as long as this whole system doesn't fundamentally change, that entire logic, the gun deciding who's actually in charge, I genuinely don't think that will ever change either, do you? So that's about all we have time for today, everyone. Thank you so much to both of our guests, and thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.